I've decided this year, being that it was my first year making these videos, I wanted to do a holiday special sort of series. And so I've done 5 episodes. This is one of them. This is the turkey episode. Now, when we think of a holiday meal, we think of a large bird or sometimes a large roast. It's something that people love, especially around Thanksgiving. It's also something that scares people. It's a big piece of meat, it's a big carcass that you cook, and it's a type of cooking that most people don't do normally. So I'm going to show you how to do it, and it's actually pretty simple, as long as you approach it methodically. The bird I'm using today is 22 pounds. I'm expecting that to take 4.5 to 5.5 hours in the oven, but the process of making it actually starts a good 8-9 days ahead. About a week ago, I started defrosting it. It's finally ready. What I'm going to do first is salt it, then gonna let it dry overnight in the fridge, uncovered. Then after it's been salted, going to throw it into the oven, roast it. Gonna roast it in a 2-step process of 450 degrees, then 350 degrees. Then towards the end of roasting, I'm gonna lacquer it with a molasses-based glaze, and it's gonna be absolutely delicious. We're gonna start with salting the bird, and then go from there. So first thing I did is I took it out of the bag and rinsed it. In the cavity here, you're gonna have the neck. Save this, you're gonna wanna roast it and use it later. So oftentimes, they will cut this piece, the tail, also known as the Pope's nose. Go ahead and just remove the rest of that. Keep it, you're gonna roast it, and you're gonna use it for gravy later. Finally, we've got this little pop-up thermometer. Get that out of there. These are trash. The way these work is you have a spring mechanism and glue in here, and the glue melts at a certain predetermined temperature. By the time that glue heats up enough, you're going to have an inconsistently cooked bird. I think we can all agree on is we like really crispy turkey skin, right? So the way to do that is you have to give away for the fat and the skin to render off. Get your hands in between the meat and the skin and separate the skin from the bird. And that's going to give the fat and the skin a way to run out so it's not stuck right on the breast. There we go. You just got to work your fingers into there. Next step, a little bit of boiling water over here to get it to all to tighten up. And then we're going to salt it and let it sit for a day. Make sure you have a nice bowl to sit the turkey in, or do it in your sink. Water is just off the boil. You're doing just a quick What we're going to do now is get some salt into the cavity and under the skin. So I've got about 4 ounces of salt. I likely will not use all of it. Now that your turkey's all salted, what we're going to do is throw it in the fridge, uncovered, give it a night, possibly 2 or 3, depending on how much time you have beforehand. The longer the better. That way it gives a chance to dry out, that salt has a chance to penetrate, and then that way when you roast it, you're going to get a flavorful bird without having to do too much else. After a long, chilly night, here's our turkey. So you can see there's still a little bit of salt left on it. It's a little tacky. The skin's a lot drier than it was when it went in. All in all, this turkey is looking amazing. Next step, get some butter on it, get it trussed up a little, and then into the oven. There's a lot of this skin. I'm actually going to trim some of it. When you truss up your turkey, you don't want to truss it too tightly. This is not like a chicken. Chicken, you want to get them nice and compact so they're consistent. Turkeys have considerably more bone mass. They're just a bigger piece of meat. So what you want to do is still bring it together so it's consistent, but not as tightly as you would a chicken. What I'm going to do here is make sure the legs are tied together, but have a little bit of play in between them. And then I'm just gonna make sure that the wings are kind of pulled towards each other a little better, but not tight into the body. Now to truss it this way, it's really easy. What I like to do is get a wrap or two around one leg. That way I know it's not gonna go anywhere. Then the other leg, bring it in as tight as you want it to be. Hold them. Get one or two wraps in there so it's kind of tied in, and it's not going to go anywhere when you finally tie your knot. Then just give it a quick little knot. Once you have it tied together, cut off the loose ends and you're good to go. You are going to want to flip it over. And I have longer twine here, and what I'm doing is getting the twine up and under each one of the wings as close to its joint as possible. Then I come back over the top of each one, and then we're just going to tie it. Now there's multiple different ways to tie your trussing. I go for the least effective knots possible. The ones that are just really hard to tie and easy to come apart. No, I'm kidding, I'm terrible at knots. This is half a stick of butter. I'm just gonna start massaging it around. You've probably seen these before. These are the $4 aluminum disposable pans that they have in the store. These are fine to use. If they have ones with lower walls, that's better. You're gonna get better browning from your turkey that way. As you can see, I have it backside up and it's sitting on a rack in the pan. Now, because of the size of the pan are so high, I wanna make sure that the bottom gets a little bit of cook and a little bit of browning before it gets flipped over. So after about 20 minutes or so at 450, I'm gonna flip this over and then give it another 20 minutes at about 450, like I said, and then reduce the temperature to about 350 and roast it the rest of the way. For a smaller bird, 12 pounds, 12, 14 pounds, I would start checking it after about 2.5 hours. Let me get this positioned properly, and I'm gonna get this puppy into the oven. Turkey step 1 is complete. Now, next step, obviously, is to get our hands in there and flip it over. This is a little warm, so be careful. I have a couple little leftover pieces of things from as I've been cooking. I'm gonna go ahead and just toss these in there. As liquid cooks out of the turkey, these are gonna help perfume that broth. Now this is gonna brown up and then finish cooking over the course of the next few hours. This is gonna go at 450 for the next 20 minutes. That's gonna get the browning started here. And then I'm gonna reduce it to 350 and roast it the rest of the way. What I'm gonna do is just consistently find a good place on the thigh, either side, check it. When the temperature is correct, when it reads 165, I'm gonna pull it out. One last thing before it goes back in the oven. Put about a cup of water down in the bottom of the pan. Just enough to give a slightly humid environment. Over the course of the roasting, add more if it needs it. Now it can go in the oven. And we're gonna put together a quick glaze. Now, this is about 3-4 ounces of water, a 1/4 teaspoon each, nutmeg, allspice, and ground mustard. I'm gonna go with about 4 ounces of molasses. Unfortunately, this stuff pours as slow as molasses. A little bit of vinegar for balance. And then some soy sauce. It's probably 2-3 ounces. Cook it down a little and then paint it on the turkey. Here's our glaze just rolling along. I'm gonna go ahead and kill the temp to it. And all I'm gonna do, give a quick little brushing on the turkey's skin. That sugar from the molasses, that's gonna help just intensify the browning a bit. And I'm gonna glaze this, just like I am now, once more. You have got to see how beautiful this thing looks. This is freaking amazing. Turkey's out. It's been about 4.5 hours. Temp reads about 168. The lacquering I was telling you about, the molasses is browned up even more than the salting and roasting it had done on its own. So I'm excited for this. It's got to rest. Then I get to cut into it and give it a try. Now, one thing I suggest is don't carve your whole bird, and definitely don't carve it at the table. Do it in the kitchen. And it goes nice and pretty simple. What you're going to want to do to start off is, so I'm doing this a little backwards. It's a little harder for me. Run the knife right along the backbone, and right through here, you're going to get to the thigh. All you have to do is just push down, and if you want, pick it up just a little while pushing down, and you have that whole piece of meat coming off. Alright, so there's 1/4, and I'm only going to do half the bird for now, which is what I suggest for most people, because that way you have half the bird done, keep half the bird in the oven, keeping warm, and then you can pull it out when it's ready. So you have your thigh here, and you just want to take this bone out. Work the meat off of it, work it free. And there we go. Right? The reason you have to take this meat to such a high temperature, because there's a lot of connective tissue in it. And once you get to that right temperature, that connective tissue gets broken down. Now when it comes to the turkey leg, since we're not at Disneyland, I'm going to take it off the bone. Now it's time to flip the carcass and go for the wings. This is where we get it. Trim off here. Also, there's some meat through here. The oyster. Go ahead and be sure to cut that out. It'll make your life easier. If the wing wants to come off, just go ahead and take it off right there, just like that. Because there's a joint in here that when you find it, the whole thing will come apart. So the wing is off, and now we can go for the rest of the breast. Okay, so you're going to want to make a cut through here, and then along the bottom. You're going to follow that with a cut right down the breastbone, all the way down to the bone itself. Now I can get this out of the way. There's going to be a little bit of rib bone still attached. Go ahead and just run your blade through here and get them off. Try to make sure that you get it as tight to the bones as you can. Just start slicing thin. Before you serve, of course you got to clean the plate, but if you want to gild the lily, pour a little melted butter over this, and it's out of this world. I tend to go for the white meat, but I want to try the dark. I spent some work on the skin, so I got to try the skin. Salting the bird first, ensured that it was flavorful. Each bite I've had from this has a perfect level of salt. I don't want to salt it. I don't want to add anything on top of it. This doesn't need gravy. This doesn't need cranberry sauce. Nothing. The biggest reason why I want to do that lacquering is it just makes this absolutely just crispy and sticky, almost like Peking duck skin. Absolutely delicious. When you roast turkey like this, it's going to redefine how you've had turkey for your holiday meals. One more bite. Happy holidays.